Sylvia Varela Marcus.
Can you spell both the first and last name, please?
Sylvia. Varela is Varela. Marcus is Marquez.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello.
And Miss Marquez, do you work?
No, I stay at home.
And who lives in your home?
Myself, my husband David, my daughter Gabby, my other son Donovan, my other son Justic, and then I have my niece and my nephew Nevi and Stevie.
And what are their full names? Just because I think are Nevi and Stevie nicknames?
Yes, Esteban Casaus Varela, and then Nivea Barnes Varela.
And when did you, or when did the two of them start living with you?
February 23rd of 14, because we're going on 2 years.
All right. And why did you receive custody of the kids?
Because of what has happened to their brother.
And what's their brother's name?
Omaree Varela.
And so at that point, did you receive full custody of the children?
I am a foster mom right now, and we are working towards an adoption.
And you mentioned your that you're their aunt.
Yes.
Is that right? What is that relationship? Who's their mother?
Cynthia is their mother, and she is my sister.
All right. And do you know who Cynthia Varela's or Cynthia's husband was?
Yes,
And who is that?
Stephen Casaus.
And do you see him in the courthouse here today?
Yes, I do.
If you could, please identify him and point out an article or two of clothing that he's wearing.
He's sitting right there in a white shirt, dress shirt, bald head.
All right. Will the record reflect positive identification? All right. And you mentioned that your sister's with Cynthia. Who's the older sister?
I am.
And what's the age difference?
5 years.
And did the two of you grow up together?
Yes, we did.
And what was your relationship like when you were younger?
Younger, it was good. It was very close. I would take care of her all the time, so we were always together.
All right. And is this the first time that you have had custody of her children?
No.
When was the other time?
When Omaree was about 1.5.
And how long did you have him for?
Until he was about 3.
Okay, so a year and a half
Mm-hmm.
or so? But at some point, did you no longer have custody of him?
Yes.
What happened?
My sister came with some officers one evening, about 10:30 in the evening on a rainy night, to come and get him. I no longer had a power of attorney, and even though we explained the situation to the officers, they said because she is the bio mom, there was nothing that we could do. Sorry. And they took him. We had to wake him up, and they took him from us.
After that point, how often would you see Omaree and his siblings?
Your Honor, objection, relevance.
I'll allow him.
On and off, if she came around. There were times we would go to see him and we were told he wasn't there, and so we didn't get to see him all the time. So it became distant after that. The last time I saw him, he was 7.
Okay. Since you've had the children, has Cynthia ever written you?
Yes, she has.
And approximately how many letters have you received?
I don't know the number, but I was getting them about every 2 weeks.
And would you recognize her handwriting?
Yes, I would.
And if you were shown one, would you recognize it?
Yes.
In those letters, did she discuss what happened to Omaree?
Never in detail.
If you could just look at that and tell me if you like.
Yes.
And how do you recognize this?
It's my sister's handwriting, and it's a letter to myself.
And is it dated?
Yes.
And when is it dated?
4/6.
And it's how many pages is that document?
I believe this is part of just the one on both sides.
And is it signed by your sister?
Yes, sir.
And when you received this, you believed it to be written by your sister?
Yes, sir.
And on the back side of that page, did she write, "The truth will come out. I'm not hiding for him anymore. He's supposed to be my husband."
Yes.
Do you recognize this letter?
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize this letter?
Also a letter from my sister to me.
And is it in her handwriting?
Yes, sir.
Is it signed by her?
Yes, sir.
In it, probably about 2/3 of the way down the page, did she write, "I know I made a lot of mistakes and choices, but sister, I know and God knows I'm not the reason. Please believe me. Steve's conscience was and is eating him so bad. He couldn't even pay my angel his respects for me."
Yes.
Do you recognize this letter?
Yes, sir.
And how do you recognize this letter?
Once again, her handwriting and the letter from her to me.
And is it her signature on the back?
Yes, sir.
And how long is the letter?
Almost 2 pages.
Did she write, and it's approximately 3/4 of the way down on the front page of that letter. And sorry, what is the date of that letter?
4/31/14.
"I love you guys with all my heart, and I'm sorry, but God will see me through, just like he brought Steve here. Karma's a motherfucker."
Yes. Her handwriting.
And is it signed?
Yes.
Is this one dated?
No.
Do you know when it was sent to you?
Yes. My birthday.
And how do you know that?
Because she put happy birthday, sister.
And when is your birthday?
July 20th.
And was this written after Cynthia's arrest?
Yes.
In the letter, did she write, "I love and miss them all so much. It is still very hard for me about Omaree. I'm sorry, sister. I made the wrong choices, but I didn't do anything intentional. I promise I loved my son."
Yes.
you recognize this letter?
Yes, sir.
And how do you recognize this letter?
Her handwriting, and also a letter to me.
And what's the date on this letter?
January 1st, 2015.
And you said that this letter was written to you?
Yes.
In this letter, did she write to you, "But I know Steve will suffer way more than me. Omaree will never let him rest"?
Yes.
Did she also go on to write in that letter, "Sylvia, I love you, and if there's any question I can answer truthfully, is that it was not at the hands of me. I allowed a lot to go on and happen, and I take responsibility for that part, but I would never do that to anyone, much less my son"?
Yes.
She goes on, "I'm sorry, that's the impression you're under in the beginning. I tried covering in the wrong ways and said the wrong things, and I'm sorry. But what else or who else could I have turned to?" Do you recognize this letter?
Yes, sir.
Who is this letter written to?
To my daughter, Gabby.
Does Gabby live with you?
Yes.
Have you previously observed this letter?
Yes.
Is it in your sister's handwriting?
Yes, sir.
And is it her signature?
Yes, sir.
In this letter, did she write, "I'm so sorry any of this happened. I made some bad decisions and didn't protect Omaree or the babies from Steve the way I should have. I allowed Steve to influence me in all the wrong ways, and I'm sorry. But I know the truth is coming out."
Yes.
Do you recognize this letter?
Yes.
And how do you recognize this letter?
Handwriting, letter to me, signature.
And is it a letter written by Cynthia Varela Casaus?
Yes.
In it, did she write, "I've recanted my confession and have told my attorneys the full truth, but I do take responsibility for not being the woman or mother I should have been, for not protecting Omaree the way I should have, and allowing any of it to happen."
Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier you currently have custody of Nivy and Stevie, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that microphone?
I'm sorry, I was a little soft-spoken. I apologize. Are the kids going to any sort of therapy right now?
Yes, they are.
What kind of therapy do you have them in?
They are in attachment healing therapy, so that is working with their attachment with us, and also a trauma therapy.
Are they taking any medication?
Not as of right now.
How well did you know Stephen Casaus?
I had a number of years on and off with my sister. He's been, so before Mari was even born.
And you've met him before?
Yes.
You've interacted with him?
Yes. Her handwriting.
And is it signed?
Yes.
Is this one dated?
No.
Do you know when it was sent to you?
Yes. My birthday.
And how do you know that?
Because she put happy birthday, sister.
And when is your birthday?
July 20th.
And was this written after Cynthia's arrest?
Yes.
May I read that portion on there? In the letter, did she write, "I love and miss them all so much. It is still very hard for me about Omaree. I'm sorry, sister. I made the wrong choices, but I didn't do anything intentional. I promise I loved my son."
Yes.
In favor, Mrs. Mark.
I'm Kate.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for purposes of identification as State's Exhibit 63. Do you recognize this letter?
Yes, sir.
And how do you recognize this letter?
Her handwriting, and also a letter to me.
And what's the date on this letter?
January 1st, 2015.
And you said that this letter was written to you?
Yes.
And if you could, could you just take a moment to review the letter, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it.
Okay.
In this letter, did she write to you, "But I know Steve will suffer way more than me. Omaree will never let him rest"?
Yes.
Did she also go on to write in that letter, "Sylvia, I love you, and if there's any question I can answer truthfully, is that it was not at the hands of me. I allowed a lot to go on and happen, and I take responsibility for that part. But I would never do that to anyone, much less my son"?
Yes.
She goes on, "I'm sorry, that's the impression you're under in the beginning. I tried covering in the wrong ways and said the wrong things, and I'm sorry. But what else, or who else could I have turned to?" I'm now going to show you what's being marked as, for identification purposes, as State's Exhibit 64. Let me put you on it. Do you recognize this letter?
Yes, sir.
Who is this letter written to?
To my daughter, Gabby.
Does Gabby live with you?
Yes.
Have you previously observed this letter?
Yes.
Is it in your sister's handwriting?
Yes, sir.
And is it her signature?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to give you a moment to review that, and then I'm going to ask you a question about that. Okay. this letter did she write, "I'm so sorry any of this happened. I made some bad decisions and didn't protect Omaree or the babies from Steve the way I should have. I allowed Steve to influence me in all the wrong ways, and I'm sorry. But I know the truth is coming out."
Yes.
And lastly, I'd like to show you what's being marked as State's Exhibit 65 for the purposes of identification. Do you recognize this letter?
Yes.
And how do you recognize this letter?
Handwriting, letter to me, signature.
And is it a letter written by Cynthia Varela Casaus?
Yes.
If you could take a moment and review that letter, and then I'm going to ask you a question about it. In it, did she write, "I've recanted my confession and have told my attorneys the full truth, but I do take responsibility for not being the woman or mother I should have been, for not protecting Omaree the way I should have, and allowing any of it to happen."
Yes, sir.
You currently have, you mentioned earlier, you currently have custody of Nivea and Stevie, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that microphone?
I'm sorry, I was a little soft-spoken, I apologize. Are the kids going to any sort of therapy right now?
Yes, they are.
What kind of therapy do you have them in?
They are in an attachment healing therapy, so that is working with their attachment with us, and also a trauma therapy.
Are they taking any medication?
Not as of right now.
How well did you know Stephen Casaus?
I had a number of years on and off with my sister. He's been, so before Mari was even born.
And you've met him before?
Yes.
You've interacted with him?
Yes.
Would you say that, what would you say his reputation would be for honesty?
Objection, Your Honor.
Come forward. So we have some big issues to discuss before we bring it back in. So again, it's not start to direct, just go back. In fact, let's take our long break. So this is going to be 15, 20 minutes. Okay, just go relax a little bit, don't start delivering, try to relax a little bit. Please rise to the seat. Yeah, you can sit. It might be good idea to sit. Yeah, could you bring the witness please back she's on the phone. Miss Marcus.
Your Honor, can we approach you and ask you about the evidentiary issue with this witness?
And if we can, sorry.
Have a copy of it. Are you needing all of them?
Just the last one, Judge.
Can you provide that? So we can address it? So I'll turn the microphone off because I don't want to necessarily have them hearing it clear, so speak up.
Okay, Judge, sure.
Have a seat, folks. Just take a second.
And how are Nivy and Stevie doing with the loss of their brother?
They're taking it really hard. They miss him like crazy. And they want him back. They ask why. Why is he dead? Why can't he be here? Why can't I hold him? I just want to tell him I love him. He was a good big brother.
Your Honor, objection, hearsay.
They have bad dreams where they're screaming out for him. They mumble in their sleep. I don't understand what they're saying, but I'll hear Omaree. Omaree, I want you. At times, it seems like they understand, and then at times, it seems like they don't. I was asked one time by Nevi, can't we just unbury him? Can't they fix him?
You need to take a break.
No, okay. It's hard.
And how old are Nivy and Stevie?
Nevi is 7 today, and Stevie's 4.
All right. Pass the witness, Sharon.
Cross-examine.
Thank you, Judge. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
May we approach, Your Honor?
let me back up a little bit. You have been fostering Nevi and Stevie since about, is it February of 2014? Does that sound about right? How long have they been in your home?
February 23rd will be 2 years. So about 14.
About February 2014? Yes. Okay. And since they've been in your home, you have been participating in therapy with Nevi, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the therapy that you've been doing has consisted of individual therapy and then therapy with the kids, right?
Yes.
And the purpose for that is to, because they're so little, to make sure that the therapist is getting input from you as far as what's going on in the home, right?
Not to just get input from me from the home, but stuff that is going on and stuff that needs to be dealt with, yes.
Thank you. So other things that are, maybe the little kids can't communicate.
Yes.
You've heard it, so you're telling the therapist.
Yes.
And the reason for that is so that the therapist can make sure that Nevi in particular, and Stevie too, are getting appropriate treatment through the therapist, right?
Yes.
And that therapy has been ongoing since the kids have been in your home in February of 2014, right?
Since before me.
Okay. And it sort of continued with you when you became foster
Yes,
parent?
ma'am.
Okay. And when you were doing that therapy, obviously, some of the things that you were talking about is what happened to Omaree, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And isn't it true that during a therapy session where you were present in this family therapy with Nevi, the therapist, and you, on May 13th of 2014, that you explained to Nevi that her bio mother, Miss Cynthia Varela, and her father, Mr. Steve Casaus, would be in jail for a very long time or possibly forever for killing Omaree. Isn't that true?
We did tell her that they would be in jail for a really long time for the choices that they made in hurting Omaree. I didn't say killing Omaree.
Okay. So you did say that her parents, and that would include Mr. Casaus, because that's the dad she's always known, right?
Yes.
That her parents, including Mr. Casaus, would be in jail for a long time for harming Omaree, right?
Yes.
Okay. But also on that same date, May of 2014, May 13th of 2014, you relate to the therapist that Nevi talks about her bio mother, Miss Varela, being mean to her, right?
Yes.
And also during that session, actually, let me take that back. During a session on June 17th of 2014, Nevi cried and said, "Why did my mom have to hurt Omaree?"
Yes.
During another a session in October of 2014, the specific date was October 21st of 2014.
Counsel, come forward.
Yes, sir. So, Ms. Marquez, you did tell Nevi that her parents, including Mr. Casaus, were going to be in jail or prison for a long time for the injuries or the harm they did to Omaree, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, there was some testimony regarding these letters that you received from your sister while she was at MDC, right?
Yes.
And your sister wrote you, or continues to write you.
She hasn't continued and
Okay.
stopped.
But she had been writing you for a number of months at least
Yes.
when she was incarcerated, right?
Yes.
And in those letters, she would sort of tell you what was going on with her, right?
Yes.
She'd also ask you for money, right?
Yes.
And for people who are less familiar with how the system works at MDC, money at MDC is basically what's called commissary, right?
Yes.
And commissary is money on the books where you can have a phone card.
Yes.
Then there's snacks that come through, right?
I believe so.
Food.
Yes.
So you can buy stuff that's not what the jail provides, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And commissary can be used to buy like headsets.
I believe so. I don't know what they can get.
And basically you gave your sister that money so that she could have
I never
commissary.
gave her money.
Okay. But she asked you for it.
She asked me for money, but I never gave her money.
Okay. And in those letters where she's making these statements and asking for money, she's apologizing to you, right?
Yes.
And she is apologizing to her children, Nevi and Stevie, right?
Yes.
Objection error, we're now.
Outside of that exception.
Yeah. that's a mistake.
All right. I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as Defendants Exhibits B, C, D, E, F, and G. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Can you take a look at them and let me know if you recognize those?
Your Honor, we're just going to object to these hearsay statements.
That's from court's rule.
Thank you. Do you recognize
Yes,
those?
I recognize them.
All right. And what are those documents?
Drawings that my niece, Nivea, drew.
All right. And we're going to talk about them one at a time if I can figure out how to open this. There we go. We'll talk about them one at a time, starting with B, Defendants Exhibit B. Before I do that, Your Honor, I move to admit Defendants Exhibits B through G, I believe it is.
Send it back to motion.
Same objection and foundation at this point.
Yeah, I think fine, it's more foundation.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Judge.
More foundation.
Sure, Judge. And so you said these were drawings that Nevi did, is that right?
Yes.
All right. And she did these drawings when you were present, correct?
Yes.
And you talked to her about those drawings?
Yes, I do.
And in fact, there's some, on at least some of those drawings, there's adult handwriting on them, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that adult handwriting
Is mine.
is yours.
Mhm.
And they look the same as they did when you saw them last, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd move to admit Defendants Exhibits B through G.
The same thing.
Oh, don't give them no objection.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about Defendants Exhibit B.
Or you don't want, our social is control.
I will publish them in a sec. I don't know how to turn this on.
Yeah, you do.
Thanks. So Defendants Exhibit B, when was that picture drawn?
Last week.
All right. And you said you were present for that drawing, right?
Yes. I sat right next to her.
You sat right next to her when she drew it?
Yes.
And her is Nevi, right?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I publish B? Actually, before I do that, let me just ask you a couple more questions. So you said this was drawn last week, right?
Yes.
Do you know what day last week?
Around Wednesday, Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday. And before this picture was drawn, there was a meeting, wasn't there? Or a play date.
Yes.
And this play date was an event or a thing that happened, a visit that happened at the DA's office, right?
Yes, a visit with the DAs.
Okay. And when you say the DA's, who are you talking about specifically?
Nick Marshall.
Okay. And you've had a couple of these play dates at the district attorney's office before with Nevi, right?
Yes, ma'am, to get her comfortable with Nick.
Okay. But the most recent one was either Wednesday or Thursday, just of last week.
Yes.
All right. And let me get the exact date of that. So. It'd be about August 27th. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. And this play date, what is it? What do you guys do there?
Nevi plays with the toys that they have in the toy room, and they just ask her questions about her day, how things are going, how is she doing, and they just interact with her.
Okay. And by they, you're talking about Mr. Marshall and then
Maria.
Maria.
Mhm.
Okay. And then there's a second part of that meeting, right?
Sometimes, yes.
And as of last week, August 27th, this visit last week, August 27th or 28th, there was this other meeting where Nevi went in and talked to Mr. Marshall alone, right?
Council, move that microphone so we can.
I'm sorry, Judge.
Move around so much.
I'm sorry. Sure. So there was after this meeting where they played with toys and got comfortable, there was a sort of subsequent meeting where Nevi met with Mr. Marshall alone, right?
Yes.
And you were not there for that meeting.
No, ma'am.
And after that meeting with Mr. Marshall, that you were not present for, Nevi created a drawing, right?
Not immediately after. It was later that evening.
It was the same day.
Yes.
All right. And that is what's been marked as Defendants Exhibit B, correct?
Okay. Yes.
And so this drawing, those words on there, I am mad at you, Mom and Dad,
Yes.
that's Nevi's writing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And this was created August 27th or 28th last week.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Do you mind if I take a look?
Okay.
Now, I'm going to show what's been marked as Defendants Exhibit F, which, there we go. Now, when was this drawing created?
I don't know the exact date.
Okay. It was
It
done.
was before this last picture.
Okay. So it was sometime in 2015 or?
Yes.
All right.
2015 it was, yeah.
And in this photo, or in this drawing, there's some words on there. And it says, and there's a, I'm going to point to it right here, this says Nevi, is that right?
Yes.
And this here says Mom.
Yes.
And this here says Omaree on the floor,
Yes.
crying,
Yes, ma'am.
because Mom punched him too? Is that what that
Yes.
says? Okay. And Mr. Casaus isn't in that drawing, is he?
No, ma'am.
And you wrote those words because that's what Nevi was telling you, the
That's
picture.
what Nevi told me was going on in the picture.
Okay. And I'm showing you what's been marked as Defendants Exhibit D. Same thing. Looks like you wrote it sort of upside down there as far as your words, but that's okay.
She was on the other side of the table.
All right, so you talked to Nevi about this picture as well?
Yes, we talk about every picture she drew.
Right. And in here you wrote this drawing right here, this figure here, Nevi.
Yes, ma'am.
And next to Nevi it says Mom punching.
Yes, ma'am.
And then over here there's like a child with tears.
Yes.
And it says Omaree crying.
Yes.
Up here it says, I am mad, Mom is so mean,
Yes.
I'm sad.
Yes.
Mr. Casaus is not in that drawing.
Yes, ma'am.
Showing you Defendants Exhibit E. Same thing, we've got the sort of the adult writing on there.
Yes.
And this says, this little girl in a purple dress, it says Nevi.
Yes, ma'am.
And punch.
Yes.
It looks like there's a fist punching Nevi and she's got a frowny face.
Yes.
And then there's a larger figure, and that says Mom,
Yes, ma'am.
who has a smiley face.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the other hand, it says punch.
Yes.
And next to that fist, it says Omaree with
Yes.
another drawing, right?
Yes.
And then there's another figure over here, and it says snowman, and then mom messed up.
She was saying that mom messed up personal man.
Is there anything in here that depicts Mr. Casaus?
No, ma'am.
And this one actually has a date in it. You wrote the date on here as January 5th of 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
And above that, there's writing in crayon, and then you're writing underneath it.
Yes, ma'am.
And it says, "I'm mad at what you did."
Yes.
She's talking about her mom.
Yes.
So, other than the one drawing, Defendants Exhibit B, which was the drawing that was done Wednesday or Thursday of last week, there are no other drawings that Nevi did depicting Mr. Casaus kicking Omaree, correct?
No, ma'am. Because she's too scared.
Okay. So there are no drawings of Omaree being kicked by Mr. Casaus, is that correct?
There's one drawing of Steve kicking Omaree.
Other than this one that we just
No,
talked about?
just the one that we talked
Okay,
about.
which was drawn last week
Yes.
after this play date with the DA, right?
Yes.
After there was this meeting between the DA and Nevi that you didn't hear what was discussed.
Yes, ma'am.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Nothing further.
You're right.
Redirect. Yes, Your Honor. On cross-examination, defense had some photos drawn by Nevi,
Yes.
and in them they seem to indicate that it was a very chaotic and abusive household
Yes.
at that home.
Yes.
There were times that you were called to go pick up the children because of what was happening in that home.
Yes.
And did that happen more than once?
Yes.
And who would call?
My sister Cynthia.
Also on cross-examination, defense asked you a few questions about the time in, I believe it was May of 2014, where you told the children about their parents.
Yes.
And why did you tell them that?
Because they're scared. They're scared they're going to come get them and take them back. So to make her feel safe and have some sort of security, I told them that they're in jail and they may stay there for a really long time because of their choices and what they did to Marty.
I'd like to go back through a few of the exhibits that were admitted during the defense examination. And I want to just go back first to Exhibit F, and may I publish these exhibits, Your Honor? On this one, though, I wanted to ask, what was the statement that is kind of going along the right edge of that paper?
And it says Mari on the floor crying because Mom punched him and I didn't finish it and it was too hard.
And this was another drawing that I believe was, or that was admitted, and I don't think it was published. It's Defense Exhibit C. Can you describe this drawing? And I may need to switch this camera. Not sure how to do that.
Lower. Are you trying to minimize it a little bit?
I was going to try to rotate the camera to turn it, but I may be able just to zoom out.
You just have to turn the document. You try to rotate it. Is that what you're trying to do?
I was trying to rotate it, but so that it would show up the correct way. I'm not sure how to change the aspect.
You can zoom in and out. Let's do that.
That's- I believe that's as far as it's going out. Well, I'll just have to kind of move it around on the board. I'm sorry, but do you recognize this drawing as well?
Yes.
And what does it say at the top?
It says, "I'm mad at you, Daddy, because you're mean."
And then,
And then she drew herself and her dad. And she just kept tying me.
I'm not sure about the answer, but I want you to tell.
Okay.
That's what she said. It's just a question and answer.
Yes, sir.
and you're not, okay. And why did she draw this or make this drawing?
She was thinking about Dad that day. And she told me,
Objection, hearsay.
Not specifically listening off to the record.
And Your Honor, may we approach? And on this drawing, who were the individuals depicted in it?
Nevia and Esteban, her dad.
And what was the context behind this drawing?
Just that she kept, why do you have to be mean? She had to get it out. And drawing is one way she does it.
And I'd like to show another drawing that had been admitted but was not published by the defense. And this is labeled as Exhibit G. Do you recognize this one as well?
Yes, sir.
What's in this one?
She drew herself, Mom and Dad.
And what did she write at the top?
She put that she was sad and that she was mad.
And then there's some writing at the bottom. And what's that writing?
I asked her what's going on in your picture, and she put that she was crying because Mom was punching her heart and that Daddy was laughing.
And Ms. Marquez, do you remember what the context was behind this drawing?
Again, she was thinking of both of them. And she was so mad and so sad. And she had to get it out. And it's all over the place. Her drawings, they're never like, I never know what's going to come up.
You have a moment. I want to show you what was marked as Exhibit B, and I believe this was shown, but I'd like you to explain this one as well. What is depicted in this drawing?
She has herself, Mom, Dad, and Omaree. And she started off, she drew herself. And then she drew Omaree. And then she wrote, I am mad at Mom and Dad. And then she continued to draw. Next character she drew was Mom. And she had a really hard time drawing Mom. Took a break, cried, then drew Dad. Still really hard time. Took a break, cried. And I told her, and she's just, why, Auntie? Why? I'm so mad.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
And I told her, show me mad. Show me how mad you are. So she got her pencil. She just scribbled. And I let her just scribble and scribble until she stopped. And I was like, that's your mad? She goes, oh, yeah. And I told her, is there anything else, baby, that you need to put on here? And she drew the faces. So I asked her, what are the faces? And she's all sad, mad, happy. But I'm not happy right now. And I told her, can you tell me about your drawing and your picture and what's going on? And she cried through it. She's all, Mommy was kicking him. Daddy was kicking him in the stomach. And then she screamed and started calling out for her brother. And asking why. Why did they have to be mean to him? He was good.
I'm sorry for your loss. No further questions.
Counsel, come forward.